What if I told you that in an election where, an overwhelming number of citizens are actually actively demanding a change in leadership, um, the incumbent could be mathematically guaranteed to win, like months before a single ballot is even cast?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds completely like a paradox, right?
Yeah.
Because we're totally conditioned to believe that elections are decided on voting day, at the ballot box.
Right, with all the suspense hanging in the air until the very last precinct reports.
Exactly.
But the reality on the ground in Zambia right now, today, on May 4, 2026, it just completely shatters that illusion.
It really does.
We're speeding toward the August 13 presidential election, and the suspense is practically non-existent.
Yeah, it's pretty much gone.
We're looking at a board state where the final outcome just seems locked in, and not because of voter suppression or, anything nefarious at the polls,
Right.
but because of pure, unadulterated political math.
Mathematical realities, yeah.
So, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking you into the mechanics of how an opposition movement essentially defeats itself.
Which is fascinating, honestly.
It is, and our roadmap for this is this highly analytical piece from the Zambian Eye. It's titled "The Fractured Front: Hichilema's Path to a Second Term."
And just to establish the baseline here for everyone listening, we don't have a horse in this race.
No, not at all.
We aren't endorsing the incumbent, President Hakainde Hichilema, and we certainly aren't endorsing the opposition. Our goal today for you is to just purely examine the political strategy, the structural incentives, and, well, the arithmetic of this election.
Just following the data as reported by the Zambian Eye.
Exactly. We're looking at this like game theorists analyzing a chess match, taking absolutely no sides.
Right, so let's look at the current state of the board.
Yeah.
The election is in August, but the actual defining action is happening right now at the Electoral Commission of Zambia.
Or the ECZ.
The ECZ, yeah. The source highlights a statistic that honestly it stops you in your tracks.
It's a huge number.
It really is. More than 20 opposition leaders have already paid their nomination fees to officially run for president.
20.
Already. 20. And based on current filings, that number is projected to hit 30 by May 22.
30 candidates, which, fundamentally alters the entire nature of the race.
Okay, let's unpack this, because my instinct, and I think the instinct of anyone who grew up in a democracy where you usually only have like two viable choices, is to see 30 candidates and think, wow, what a vibrant system.
Right, you think it's a healthy democracy.
Exactly. If I go to the supermarket, I want 30 types of cereal, More choice usually equals better representation.
Yeah.
So why is having a massive menu of candidates suddenly a democratic crisis?
Well, it's a great question, and it's the exact trap that political systems often fall into. The source makes a brilliant distinction here.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is they explicitly note that in a first-past-the-post electoral system, having 30 candidates is not pluralism, it's fragmentation.
Pluralism versus fragmentation.
Right. Pluralism is your cereal aisle analogy. It's a healthy market of differing ideas contributing to a robust debate. But fragmentation is mechanical. It's the dark side of choice.
The dark side of choice, I like that.
Yeah, it's where an abundance of options actually destroys the possibility of achieving a mandate because of the diffusion of votes.
Because of the first-past-the-post rules.
Precisely.
Let's make sure we ground that concept for you listening, because it is the engine driving this entire disaster for the opposition. In first-past-the-post, there's no prize for second place.
None at all.
And crucially, you don't need a 50% plus one majority to win if there are no runoff requirements. You just need to be the person who crosses the finish line with the largest single block of votes.
Exactly. Even if that block is relatively small.
I like to think of it like this. Imagine it's raining, and you need to collect more water than the incumbent. The incumbent has one big bucket.
Okay, one bucket.
But the opposition, instead of bringing one massive bucket to catch the rainwater, brings 30 tiny pitchers.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right, so instead of filling one big bucket to the brim to beat the incumbent, you end up with 30 little puddles.
Yeah, 30 little puddles. Let's put some hypothetical numbers to this just to show how brutal the math really is.
Let's hear it.
Imagine a scenario where, say, a solid 65% of the country is deeply dissatisfied with the status quo.
Okay, so a clear majority wants the incumbent out.
Right. If they unite behind one single challenger, that challenger wins 65 to 35. It's a massive landslide.
Not even close.
But if that 65% is divided among 30 different opposition candidates, The average opposition candidate is only walking away with maybe, what, 2 or 3% of the vote?
2%, wow. Meanwhile, the incumbent just sits there holding his baseline 35%.
Exactly. He doesn't need to win over a single new voter.
He doesn't even need to be particularly popular with the majority of the country.
No, he just needs to maintain his core base while the other side they slice their pie into thinner and thinner slivers.
That is the essence of fragmentation right there.
It is. The source points out that the 30 candidates in the opposition field, they are actively and mathematically reducing each other's share of the total vote.
Not the incumbent's share.
No, that's the kicker. Every time one opposition leader campaigns successfully, they are highly likely pulling a voter away from another opposition leader.
So they're essentially doing the incumbent's campaign work for him.
They absolutely are.
It's like trying to empty a swimming pool with 30 tiny teaspoons.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how fast you scoop, you are never going to make a dent.
Yeah, it's an exercise in futility.
But this leads me to a massive contradiction.
Okay, what's that?
If the math is this absolute and, the failure of the 30-way split is this glaringly obvious to us and to the analysts at the Zambian IME,
Right.
it has to be obvious to the politicians too, right? I mean, these are seasoned operators.
Oh, no, they definitely know.
So why on earth are they walking into the Electoral Commission and handing over their nomination fees? Are they just blind to the arithmetic?
Well, no, they aren't blind to it at all. In fact, many of them are playing a completely different game than the voters think they're playing.
A different game.
Yeah, and that brings us to the profound disconnect between the public mandate and personal political ambition.
Right, the 4-year demand.
Exactly. The reporting highlights that for more than 4 solid years, the Zambian public has been making a very explicit demand ahead of this August 13 election.
They wanted a united opposition.
They absolutely demanded it.
The voters were basically screaming for a 2-horse race. They wanted accountability, a coalition that could present a unified vision.
They wanted a real policy debate.
Yeah, and a genuine choice that carried actual mathematical weight.
And for 4 years, opposition leaders, they likely paid lip service to that idea.
Sure.
But when the deadline actually approached, the unity collapsed. The source diagnoses this as a prioritization of personal candidacies over collective purpose.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that is a polite way of saying individual ego killed the coalition.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I want to push back on that a bit. Is it really just pure vanity, just like wanting to see your face on a billboard?
What?
Because it costs real money to run a national campaign. Paying the ECZ fees, printing shirts. Why spend capital to run a race you mathematically know you will lose at 2%?
Right, it seems irrational. But if we connect this to the bigger picture in fragmented political systems, running for president isn't always about becoming president.
Okay, and what is it about?
It's often about securing leverage.
Leverage.
Yeah, think about the hidden incentives here. If an opposition leader steps aside and endorses a coalition candidate, they risk fading into political obscurity.
Their name isn't on the ballot.
Exactly. Their specific party structure might atrophy, but if they run and they manage to secure even 3 or 4% of the national vote.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. Perhaps concentrated in a specific regional stronghold, they suddenly become a kingmaker in the broader political landscape.
So it's about proving you control a voting bloc. You go to the eventual winner, or even the incumbent, and say, look, I control 4% of the electorate. What cabinet position is that worth? What ministerial portfolio will you give me to keep my people quiet?
Precisely. The system rewards holding on to your splinter of power rather than sacrificing it for the greater good of the movement.
That is incredibly cynical.
It is, but it's a classic collective action problem. If all 30 opposition leaders united, they could win the ultimate prize.
The presidency.
Right. But because no single leader trusts the others to share the spoils of victory fairly, they all rationally choose to protect their own small fiefdoms.
Guaranteeing that none of them win the presidency.
Exactly.
It's the prisoner's dilemma played out on a national scale. But, the tragic part is the collateral damage.
The voters.
The voters, yeah. The source describes this as a political failure with public consequences.
Which is so accurate.
The politicians are playing game theory for cabinet posts.
Yeah.
But the citizens are left with a ballot that looks like a phone book.
A phone book, yeah.
And they know their demand for a competitive election has been completely nullified.
The electorate is disenfranchised by the sheer noise of too many options. I mean, the public mandate for unity wasn't just an abstract slogan, right?
Right.
It was a survival strategy for the opposition.
Right.
By ignoring it, the political elite have effectively silenced the voters they claim to represent.
It's mind-blowing. So the opposition is busy cannibalizing itself, fracturing into dozens of micro-campaigns.
Right.
But let's pivot to the other side of the board. Because President Hakainde Hichilema hasn't just been sitting in the State House eating popcorn while his rivals self-destruct.
No, not at all.
He has been utilizing this exact same pre-election period to do the total opposite of the opposition.
He has been consolidating.
Consolidating.
And this is where the political machinery really comes into focus. The Zambian IYI outlines how the incumbent enters this election with a highly solidified base of support.
Okay.
But there is a specific devastating detail in the reporting regarding how he is actually expanding that base.
Yeah, I remember reading this part.
Sitting opposition members of parliament are publicly endorsing President Hichilema.
I read that, and I literally had to reread it.
It's shocking.
We are talking about currently elected representatives, people whose very job title is to oppose the governing party,
Right.
crossing the aisle right before an election to endorse the incumbent president. From a voter's perspective, that looks like pure political treason.
It does look like that, yeah.
Why would an opposition MP do that? Do they suddenly just, like, fall in love with the president's policies overnight?
Well, while some might genuinely agree with the administration's direction, we really have to look at the structural machinery of how a state operates,
Okay.
particularly in centralized systems. An MP's primary job, in the eyes of their constituents, is to bring resources back to their district.
Right. Roads, schools, clinics.
Agricultural subsidies, exactly. In a system where the executive branch holds a tight grip on the national treasury and state resources, an opposition MP is often politically starved.
They don't have the keys to the safe.
Exactly. So if you're an opposition MP and you see your own party splintering into 30 different presidential vanity projects, what do you realize?
You realize very quickly that your side is not going to win the presidency.
Right. Which means you are staring down the barrel of another 5 years without access to state resources for your district.
And your constituents will blame you for the potholes.
Exactly.
So endorsing the incumbent isn't necessarily a change of heart. It's a brutal survival mechanism.
Survival, pure and simple.
You publicly cross the aisle, you bend the knee, and in exchange, maybe the incumbent's administration suddenly finds the budget to pave that road in your constituency.
Right. You secure your own local re-election by sacrificing your party's national ambitions.
That is patronage politics working at maximum efficiency.
It really is. And the psychological impact of these endorsements on the broader electorate, it cannot be overstated.
I can imagine.
When high-profile opposition MPs publicly defect to the incumbent, it creates this impenetrable aura of inevitability.
Like it's already over.
Exactly. It sends a very clear signal to the average voter. Even the leaders inside the opposition movement do not believe they can win. Why should you?
Wow. It just bleeds whatever remaining credibility the fractured opposition had left.
Absolutely.
It validates the incumbent's power, and ironically, it's a validation handed to him on a silver platter by his own rivals.
His own rivals, yeah. Which brings us to the stark conclusion of the board state as it exists today.
Right.
The analysis from the Zambian IYE doesn't mince words. On one side, you have a completely unified incumbent wielding the power of state resources, backed by a consolidated base and public defections from his rivals.
So what does this all mean? We look at the other side, and you have a chaotic scramble of up to 30 individuals.
30 competing individuals.
A field entirely driven by personal ambition and leveraging strategies, actively tearing each other down in a first-past-the-post system that literally penalizes division.
The mathematical reality is just unyielding. May 22, the deadline for these nominations to finalize is rapidly approaching.
It's right around the corner.
And August 13 is coming fast. The source states bluntly that, given this current trajectory, it is incredibly difficult to see how the opposition can reverse course in time.
The inertia of fragmentation is just too strong.
Too strong,
You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, you know. Once those 30 leaders have paid their ECZ fees, printed their banners, and riled up their core supporters, none of them are going to voluntarily back down.
No, ego and leverage won't let them. And because of that, the analysis concludes that opposition unity for this specific election cycle has effectively ended.
It's over before it began.
Which perfectly positions President Hakainde Hichilema to secure a second term. Not necessarily through a bruising, competitive campaign of ideas, but simply by allowing his opponents to dismantle themselves.
It's honestly a masterclass in the unintended consequences of electoral design.
It really is.
We started this deep dive with a question. How can an election be decided months before anyone actually votes? And the answer is found in the rigid mechanics of the system colliding with the predictable flaws of human ambition. The Zambian voters spent 4 years asking for a heavyweight championship bout.
They did. They wanted a clear, binary choice about the future of their country.
But instead, they got 30 people fighting in the parking lot over who gets to hold the microphone,
Right.
while the champion is already in the ring, holding the belt, just waiting for the referee to call the match.
That's a perfect analogy.
It's a tragic irony, really, and it's something that happens in democracies all over the world, not just in Zambia.
Oh, everywhere.
We are taught from a very young age that a ballot with more names on it is the hallmark of a free society.
We equate a long list of candidates with a thriving, healthy, democratic process.
Exactly. More choices must mean more freedom.
But the mechanics we've explored today force us to challenge that assumption. Because when the rules of the game dictate that the winner takes all, a crowded field isn't a marketplace of ideas.
It's a meat grinder for the opposition.
A meat grinder, yes.
It leaves you wondering about the very nature of voter empowerment.
Right.
If the system is designed in a way where politicians can prioritize their own leverage over the unified mandate of the people, where does the actual power lie?
This raises an important question for you listening. That is the thought I really want to leave you with today as you process all of this.
Yeah.
We place so much faith in the idea of choice. But looking at the cold, hard mathematics of fragmentation, you have to ask yourself a deeply uncomfortable question.
What's that?
In a system that mathematically punishes division, at what point does having too many choices actually strip you of your power to change anything at all?